For me, Dragonheart was not even an option. It was an obligation and then became an obsession. There are stories that reach you in the heart deeply. And this is a story about a heart that's shared, and about a man who finds his own heart and codes of honor, codes of behavior. I first read Dragonheart in the early 90s, but it was not given to me to direct. It was given to me by Rafaela de Laurentiis, the producer who had developed it, to give to my then partner, John Badham. We had a production company in which I was directing television pilots and Miami Vice and 30-something, and he was the feature director and I was the feature producer. And so she gave it to me. We were working on another project for me to direct, and she said, would you give this to your partner? Badham didn't respond to the material, but I thought it was fantastic, a great story. Had no idea how it could be done technically.
Sorry, Bowen. I hope you like it well done.
At that point, Patrick Reed Johnson, who had created the story, was set as the director.
He came to talk to me one day about this idea he had about this story about this last dragon and the last dragon slayer teaming up and conquering evil.
It was essentially, you know, the Skin Game with a dragon in it. You know, the idea of, or sort of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Dragon, you know. I wanted the idea of a dragon and a knight conning villages for money just seemed really kind of, not only funny, but kind of sweet, you know.
Come on, dragon. Yes! Oh!
And then we met Chuck Pogue, who wrote the screenplay.
And I pitched him the idea for Dragonheart, and he listened patiently, and I thought, well, you know, at the end, he's going to basically say, thanks, kid, see ya. Instead, he just looked at me and goes, I'm in.
He told me what he had of this story, which was the beginning and the end, and the device of the heart and all that, and I was just intrigued, and it's one of those things where I went home and ideas just started bristling out of me, and I could not sleep because it was just all coming in a big rush.
Universal said they would be willing to make the movie with Patrick directing, but only if I could bring the budget in at a certain number. And the only way we had to find out if that was possible was to, you know, go by more traditional means of creating this dragon, which was sort of like doing it like they did it in the old days, you know, Godzilla and King Kong, you know, more modern techniques, but still the same idea. And of course, the best people to do that in the world are the Hensons.
Henson Creature Shop started building this dragon. 8 weeks later, they delivered it on time and looking pretty good. And we went over to England to Shepperton Studios and set up a pretty impressive set, which we probably shouldn't have spent as much time on as we did. I mean, we decided to shoot the campfire sequence, and we decided to shoot it outdoors at night, but we couldn't really shoot outdoors at night, so we had to literally build this big, you know, forest clearing on stage and fill it in with a hanging foreground miniature of boulders and trees in the foreground and really extend it and make it look. And we had fireflies, and we had, you know, it was really quite a production.
The problem was, though, that I could never get the budget down to where Universal would be willing to make it with Patrick directing.
It was very, very difficult for me because it was a dream project. It was something that it had inhabited my soul for a number of years, and I gave it everything I had.
And in 1992, I went off to Hong Kong to make the Bruce Lee story with Rob. And we had a fantastic working relationship. And when we came back and the movie opened in '93, you know, what that movie had was something that I really needed for Dragonheart. That movie had great action, but a lot of heart. And it's very hard to find a director that can give you both.
It was during that time that a very significant event occurred in the development of Dragonheart, and it was called Jurassic Park. Raffi and I were at an early screening of Jurassic Park, and I turned to her and I said, there's your Dragonheart. That's the way to do Dragonheart, right there. So she went and got the studio to open their minds to this possibility that the team of she and I, which had been successful on Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, would go to Dragonheart. And finally Universal said, okay, let's hear your ideas. I told them my ideas. We made the deal, the agreement to go forward, and my first trip was to ILM to see if the technology of Jurassic Park could now be pushed to the next step, which was full-born character animation, that Draco would be alive.
Hello.
When I went to ILM, my next stop was to go across the bay to the garage, sloppy, crazy, creative, and wonderful shop of Phil Tippett.
Our initial involvement in Jurassic Park, was from the point of view of overall direction and choreography and developing of the sequences. Our primary responsibility on Dragonheart was more to design, come up with the look of the dragon itself, and then begin to, in the context of the character design, block out some of the initial sequences using animatics, in which we create very rough moving storyboards that further delineate the action that is indicated in the storyboards, but really create the blocking and the timing of the sequence.
We went into a whole long series of things, and Phil said, you know, the place we should start is with the Fu dog, with the temple guardian dog of Buddhist shrines, which is a lion mane. It's half lion, half dog. And the Fu dog, the beautiful thing about it is it has a certain lion-like elegance, a fierceness, but it's ultimately an incredibly proud and powerfully visually powerful creature.
But then we went back and forth on the aspects of it, the heavy chest and the head that wasn't on a long neck. We compressed the neck and I was thinking also a great deal about the release format of the film, what the rectangular frame was going to be, and so a great deal of the dragon design was taking that into account as well, how he would be framed on shot-to-shot basis, working in conjunction with if it's a buddy picture and one of the buddies is this big and the other buddy is that big, then you're going to have problems in framing the shot. So what kinds of things can the dragon do really became an issue. So it's not just, you can't just do a drawing or a sculpture. And I worked very closely with our sculptor at my studio, Pete Koning, who came up with the actual sculptures and did a great deal of the design work himself in determining what the various aspects of the dragon could be, if it was in a lying pose, or if it was in a angry pose, or and from this we would begin to create a number of very small clay sketches or maquettes that we would take to Rob, and there would be maybe 20 or 30 of these things, and from those Rob would choose one of Pete's sculptures and say, this kind of sort of feels right, and we'd take that and then go back and hone it and develop it more into what ultimately became this final design maquette of the Draco character.
We went through a series of thousands and thousands of design issues: the wing, the shape of the wing, his color, what shape should his pupils be, how big should the eyes be, his teeth, how old is he, should he have cracked teeth, worn teeth, did he get in fights, does he have scars, all these things that I wanted to do. And to solve problems like how big he should be, it was a question of, we had a scene where Bowen and he have an epic battle, and he winds up in the mouth of the dragon.
If your feet come down, my sword goes up right into your brain.
And I kept drawing from nature, from boa constrictors, and I watched how they removed the pins from their jaws to open their jaws wide to swallow a creature 2 or 3 times the size of its head. And I said, well, why can't dragons have detachable jaws? So in the scene where he swallows Bowen, before he goes to swallow him, you see the the pins push out and the jaw distends, so you could justify having a smaller head. And Phil and I finally set Draco at 18 feet high and 43 feet long with a 72.3 foot long wingspan.
Rob wanted two huge fangs for some of the scenes, particularly the scene where they have their standoff. So the retractable teeth were not so much a problem. More a problem for us were these other, interlocking teeth. How you make something with these big, chompers.
Things kept falling in, working, and looking at the consequences of any given physical decision. I wanted him to be like a Swiss Army knife. I wanted him to have a resting tail and a fighting tail. I felt Draco needed to use his hands, so he had to have feet and hands, not just have his wings and feet. So Nature is a master designer. With the help of Phil Tippett and Stephen Price, our first visual effects supervisor, I was able to get my dragon put together in a way that I thought was very successful, unique, and ultimately functioned well to be the first computer graphic actor.
Rob had requested a posable maquette. So in addition to the 5-foot model that we sent along for a lighting reference, there was another, like a stop motion model. It had an articulate skeleton in it that you could bend, and it was taken from the design maquette and cast up in a rubber material that would allow him to pose it, so he could imagine the model, with its tail curled around, or its wings unfolded, or its head looking back the other direction. That would help explain, to the crew what he was looking for. It's one thing to design a dragon. It's another thing to give it a personality. To give it a personality, I felt it was very important that the personality be derived from the actor that was going to play the voice.
Haven't you noticed the pickings are rather slim these days?
I got me one just the other day.
So it was you who killed the scarred one?
For me, there were two choices for the voice, Sean Connery and Sean Connery. And it never entered my mind that it could be anyone else but Sean. He seemed to me to have not only a unique voice, instantly recognizable, but it's what he stood for in life as an actor and as a man that most related to what I had hoped for Draco.
Yes, my half-heart that cost me all of my soul. Even then, I knew his bloodthirsty nature, but I thought my heart could change him. My God, I was so naive.
No more than I. All my life I've dreamed of serving noble kings, noble ideals.
I was so impressed when I met Dennis. When we left the room, I turned to Rafaela De Laurentiis, the producer, and I said, he is a knight of the old code.
I am a knight of the old code. My word is my bond.
And I said, he's handsome, he's obviously intelligent and fun to work with. I really think he's Bowen.
Yeah, I did a lot of training on this movie. I had to do a lot of sword fighting. So I worked with a Japanese sword master. His name was Kiyoshi Yamasaki. And because I wanted him to have an Eastern flavor, and Rob did too. And so they've learned a lot about samurai swords, and the armor that I'm wearing in this film is very Eastern. There's a touch of it there.
Like a pudding.
Dina Meyer was a second person we interviewed of 200 young women to play Kara. Kara is a difficult role in the sense that not only is she the moral conscience of the picture, she's supposed to be a peasant. Now, a lot of women today are very beautiful, but they are very thin, fragile. They wouldn't have made it past 1 year old in the dark ages. And I needed somebody who was strong, and I needed somebody who could, in the end, handle herself with these double Viking axes and look believable.
I think he brought out a really a much richer performance out of my character, because he knew what was going on in every scene so well. You know, he knew exactly what the dragon was thinking, what Bowen would be thinking, the weather, every little nuance he knew, and I think it was really helpful to me as an actor. It's always good to work with a director that knows what they're doing.
Pete Postlethwaite I'd seen in Name of the Father. He had received an Academy Award nomination. No one knew if he could do comedy, but I felt that anybody who was that assured in a dramatic role could take Brother Gilbert and make it real, make it charmingly funny, if not. I didn't want a buffoon, I didn't want a goofball. I wanted, you know, but I wanted an energetic and very strong presence.
Turn the other cheek, brother.
David Thewlis I'd seen in the film Naked, the Mike Leigh picture, which was so absolutely unabashedly, brutally strong and honest. He played an evil and amoral character with such aplomb and such abandon that it took my breath away. He won Best Actor at Cannes for that film, so he was my idea for Einan, because I thought what makes a villain scary is the brain, not the brawn.
I'm playing a symbol, I'm playing a representative metaphor of a character, and so really it's trying to find where to pitch the performance, because you're playing against an 80-foot dragon with the voice of Sean Connery, and and everything's just bigger, so your performance is bigger, but that's exactly what makes it fun.
And because of him, we got Julie Christie. They share the same agent, David Thewlis and Julie Christie, and so when the agent said to her, here's a script, you would play David Thewlis's mother, Julie, who's not worked in an American picture, I think, in 15 years, got interested.
Forgive me.
I know why you brought me the Dragon Slayers. You wanted them to kill him because you wanted me dead.
I wanted to correct a mistake made years ago when I saved a creature not worth saving.
I needed a voice for the presence of King Arthur, and you look at the world of great voices, and you have to list on any list, whether it's 2 voices or 3 voices, one of them has to be Sir John Gielgud.
A knight is sworn to valor.
A knight is sworn to valor.
His heart knows only virtue.
His heart knows only virtue.
His blade defends the helpless.
His blade defends the helpless.
His might upholds the weak.
His might upholds the weak.
His word speaks only truth.
His word speaks only truth.
His wrath undoes the wicked.
His wrath undoes the wicked.
So once we found the locations, which we did in Slovakia, former Czechoslovakia, we came back and we started rewriting, working on the script to make it match where we were really going to do the film and all that. And, the process of rewrite was sort of like on every movie. You just keep rewriting until, a few days before you start shooting. And basically then we started production in July of '94.
Well, what can we say? We're hot. A hot movie. There are some collaborators that you have, that you find when you make a movie, that you say, these are my collaborators. This is a team. We are going to be a movie-making machine. And I have been very blessed by the contributing talents of many men and women that have worked on Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, then came into Dragonheart, and now are moved on with me to Daylight. David Egby is an Australian cinematographer. He did the first Mad Max. He's done Dragon and Dragonheart and Daylight with me. I love his eye. I love the way he works, the speed at which he works, the chances he's willing to take, and his flexibility. Benjamin Fernandez, the production designer, can build anything, anywhere, with more skill, more enthusiasm, more detail, more brilliance than any production designer I've ever worked with, or even known.
This will bring you out well below the castle walls.
I met the costume designer of Schindler's List, Anna Shepard, who is part Polish and part English, and I was very, very moved by her take on Dragonheart. She began to design the clothes for Bowen and Einan and Gilbert. Unfortunately, she got extremely ill in the middle of pre-production, and we were very fortunate to bring in Thomas Casterline, who understood a tremendous amount about the mass scenes, the bulk of armor and the other costuming in the picture, and Julie Christie's costumes, and just was able to pick up where Anna left off. Now, I had storyboarded